Doing church online is hard enough. You've got to worry about cameras. You've got to get the sermon audio preaching into the view. You've got to track the pastor. You've got lighting to worry about. But then preaching, teaching, that's only a portion of service. We also want to worship together, even if it's remotely. And when you throw church music into the mix, it feels like your head's about to explode. Well, in today's video, me and Dave are going to teach you a little bit about live streaming music, but we decided to bring in the expert, the genius, Doug Doppler here to put everything into perspective for you. And so you can do better live streaming, not only for your in-congregation people, but especially for your live streaming audience, because we want to make sure their experience is just as good as those in person. My name is Justin Nava. I am part of Church Training Academy, where we teach churches how to use technology, amplify the gospel, and change lives. And with me is Dave Curley. Dave, also part of Church Training Academy. How are you today, Dave?
I am good. If I were any better, I'd like have a puddle on the floor.
And that's a little preview of just how raw we are here on Stream Your Church. And before we go any further, I want to remind you all to subscribe for more fabulous content like this. You get nothing but the truth here. No punches are held back. So hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, wherever you're at. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss a live. If you're following Ecamm, turn on notifications because they're putting out massive amounts of content every week. And if you're following Church Training Academy, we put out 2 live shows and a pro tip for you every week. And that's the best way to stay up to date and constantly improve your ministry, not just so you can feel good about yourself, but so you can change lives. We don't want to just impact your life. We want to impact the lives that you're trying to impact. If you have any questions today, be sure to use #question in the chat. Our moderator, Christopher Hall, is here. We always encourage you guys, and like I said in the pre-show, we do live shows because we want you guys to guide and mold this conversation. So be sure to use #question. Christopher will get us the questions, and if it's related to the topic and it helps clarify some stuff, we will absolutely answer that for you. Without further ado, let me introduce our new friend, our new bestie. Honestly, I'm scared he's going to take my position because Dave loves him so much. Doug Doppler. Doug, how's it going, man?
Hi, great to be here.
We're so glad to have you. Doug, tell us, for anyone that's never heard about you, give us the quick pitch. What do you do? How long have you been doing it? And what brings you on the Stream Your Church show?
See if I can say that succinctly. One, I'm the editorial director of Worship Musician Magazine. I host the weekly stream for the Worship Guitar Show on Tuesday nights. On Wednesday nights, I host Doppler's Gear Garage, which is basically for a mainstream audience around guitars and gear and technology. Tomorrow, I'm hosting a webinar for Yamaha around this new YC61 keyboard. NAM, National Association of Music Merchants, has had me host a number of their webinars. I've been around media for decades, and I think in 1995, when I put out my first CD, I was the very first artist in Guitar World magazine to use this thing called a URL, Uniform Resource Locator, and it was basically a print ad with this link. So I've been around this media thing. I'm in California, so in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I've been around media pretty much my entire life, and I love the blend of technology and music and creativity and worship.
We are so glad you're here, Doug. And we connected through Katie, who is the mastermind behind all of this that's happening as far as the Ecamm content. We love her. She said, first of all, pastors, church leaders alike, since the pandemic started, are just scouring for resources, and a lot of them found Ecamm. And one of the biggest questions they keep asking that Katie asked us to cover is music in live streaming, because music in person is hard. But when you start adding stuff like getting it mixed for in-house and getting it for the online stream, or even just getting it mixed for online, totally different beast. And we are very excited that you're here to talk about that. I do want to introduce one thing first. This show is brought to you by Ecamm. I'm running it here on my computer. I'm not a tech guy, but I can run a pretty decent live stream now with Ecamm. So if you want to try it yourself, we got a 14-day trial for you. No credit card required. Go to getecamm.com, getecamm.com. And if you're like me, if you like free stuff, follow them on Instagram at Ecamm Network. They are doing a giveaway this week. I wish I was I wish I was eligible because it's a really cool kit. They're giving away a kit basically. You get all the equipment, you get a box of equipment, you set it up, and you've got like professional streaming like we do. All you gotta do is go follow them on Instagram, like the post, follow the instructions in the post. So go find them at Ecamm Network on Instagram. So we are here today because we want to talk about live streaming. So question of the day for everyone watching: are you live streaming your worship music or are you pre-producing it? Because we know that music is such an integral, important part of the corporate worship experience, and we don't want to neglect that experience, that corporate worship, for our live stream audience. And Doug, tell us, we were going to do some rapid fire questions, but I want to go ahead and just get onto the content here. Doug, tell us, why is live streaming music so hard?
Excuse me. In many situations, you're dealing with volunteers. So in a church environment, and on the worship guitar show last night, one of the conversations was about, if you've got a small church, which most people attend a small to medium-sized church, your volunteer skill level is about here. The requirement level is about here. Excuse me, when you start to going streaming live audio. So it's one thing to get a volunteer who's capable of getting a great sound in the room. That's something you can practice from week to week. Being able to get a great sound in the room and in turn create a separate stream that's going to go to your audio for your live stream, you're now basically juggling hatchets and chainsaws at the same time. And so there are two different requirements, but it's really the same gig. The benefit of being able to stream to a live stream is then you can watch back and go, what didn't work? And this is the biggest problem and biggest mistake I think people don't make, is they don't go back and go, let's watch through this. Let's make some notes. Could I hear the drums? Could I hear the worship leader? Were the levels good? Was there a drop? Was it distorting? So when we go back and look, we can go back and listen and learn. And listening and learning is the most important part of the process, because that's how it gets better.
100%. So tell me, because I want to make sure that we understood this correctly. So it's hard because we're dealing with a volunteer base, but how much different, I guess, is live stream mixing versus in-house mixing? Because I know oftentimes it sounds great in-house, and then I'll put in my earbuds to hear this live stream on my phone, and it doesn't sound anything close. Like, why is it so different?
Justin, are you there?
When you're in a live environment, there's a person up on the platform at the very back there hitting things with sticks, sometimes very aggressively, and it makes an awful lot of noise. So traditionally, you don't need to capture all of that into the PA in a live environment. The problem is that in a live stream, you don't have that full snapshot of what it sounds like in the room. Now, if you're a total novice, you think, well, can't we just kind of capture the sound in the room? And that's just not how the whole thing works. It's a lovely idea, but you really can't do it like that for a range of reasons. Now, so that said, you basically have two completely different types of mixes, which is one, you're kind of creating your front of house, that is to say, your live mix in the room for the congregation, whether they're there or, a couple of people are there. In turn, this other mix for the live stream has to basically sound as if somebody's down the hall listening to it on their iPhone, because quite often people are watching it on their iPhone. But again, that listening experience, how are people going to tune in? Are they in front of their TV set? Are they on their iPhone? Any one of those possibilities can kind of bookmark that experience. But the thing is that they no longer have the benefit of hearing the drums in the room. So if you're not capturing things as if it's a reproduction, and that's actually a really good way to think about it. It is a reproduction of what's actually happening live. It's just happening roughly at the same time. And there are benefits to doing it live, but there are also some emerging approaches to doing this. And I'm gonna rabbit trail on this just a little bit.
Rabbit trail away.
If, for example, you're not having a congregation that's actually meeting in person, with something like Ecamm Live, you can pre-record all your worship. Mm-hmm. Have your pastor hand it off to the worship team, say, all right, now Chris is going to lead us in this song. Transition. Chris starts leading. He's like, hey, everybody, how you doing? That's totally canned. Nobody has to know. So the deal is, and the great thing about Ecamm Live is you can record up to 4K video inside Ecamm Live with total professional level audio fidelity. I mean, it's an amazing application. So literally is a one-stop production studio. You might need to trim things a little bit. I use Premiere to do that. But the thing is that natively you can capture all the things you need to do. And so the idea is you've got your pastor or your service host. Hey, welcome, blah, blah, blah. All right, we're going to start things off with worship. So-and-so, take it away. Transition. Canned worship. Hey, thanks so much. Good morning, everybody. And so-and-so is now, leading the congregation in worship. They may or may not be socially distanced. And here's the thing, is then at that point you can go, okay, I've got these folks, maybe let's say 4 people, a drummer, bass player, worship leader who strums guitar, and a keyboardist. They're all in 4 potentially isolated locations playing to a click track, but then that gets mixed together. Right. So again, you have the benefit of taking a high fidelity multi-track recording session, but then basically linking that up together if you want to in post, but then you can mix it and end up with a great sounding mix. You're tossing it on off, so you're getting amazing worship live, but it's being produced beforehand. So then the benefit of that on a streaming approach is that the pastor is giving the message. You can take comments. You can have people down there in the comments kind of doing, praying for people and doing prayer requests. And it gives you the benefit of having all of that without any of the challenges around having a separate mix. That said, churches like Bethel, they were streaming long before this whole COVID thing happened. And the reality is that they have a broadcast mix that's specifically being prepared for broadcast. So traditionally what will happen is there will be all the channels coming off the board. So anything that's up on the platform is being mic'd. That's coming through the main board where things are being mixed, and in turn, that's being fed into a DAW, digital audio workstation.
Okay, hang on, Doug. Hang on, because I can
Yes.
feel the disturbance in the force right now with the people
Sorry,
watching.
I had a breakfast taco. I apologize.
Hang on a second. You're saying that even if and granted, we talked about this in our meeting last week in our planning meeting. We
Our
Church
awesome
Training Academy, and
planning
especially we believe every church is uniquely equipped to serve a unique group of people with their unique gifts. But so obviously we don't give blanket statements, but best practices are best practices. Okay, they work well for a reason for the most people. Okay, so we want you to use your unique gifts and resources to the best of your ability, but don't use that as an excuse to say, well, we don't have to do that because best practices work for a reason. Okay, you write and preach a certain way because it works. So you're saying though, you almost buried a little bit as we started getting the technical. That's why I wanted to stop you and slow you down. You're saying that even though we're doing live worship, a better experience would really be to go ahead and pre-record. Whoa, don't lose your head there. Don't lose your head there, Doug. You're saying that actually, no, it's still better, even if you're meeting for live worship, to go ahead and produce a worship set similar and then provide that for your live stream audience. And honestly, I'm mulling around in my head. Maybe someone in the comments can help me play devil's advocate. I can't think of a really good reason, because you're worshiping the same music, you're worshiping at the same time, but you're getting a better experience. It's almost like, an overflow live stream pipe from the main sanctuary is one thing, but you're broadcasting it, like you said, to separate devices. Some people are watching on TV, some people are watching on computer, laptops, phones, iPad devices, tablet devices. So I just want to make sure that I understood you correctly and that everyone in the chat understood you correctly too. You're actually saying that the best way to get really good live stream music is to go ahead and pre-produce it.
Yes, and I will add that a friend of mine, and it would be inappropriate for me to share what church they're at, but they are at a giant church, like 20 plus campuses. What they are in the process of doing is building a production facility that is where they're going to track and record, that is sonically and video, all the worship. And they are now kind of going, well, the game has changed. There were churches like Bethel, and I'm going to backtrack just a little bit because I want to loop that in and then segue that in here. If you were to take a look at let's see if I can do this right today.
Oh, here we go, folks.
My desktop. I'm in the wrong application. Hang on, let me get over to Ecamm. There we go. If you were to take a look at my desktop there, you're going to see this little guy here. And that is an audio interface. So basically, churches like Bethel have been taking a feed off the board, running it into a DAW, mixing a separate mix, a broadcast mix for live stream, and that happens in real time, and it works great. But you actually have to have the skill to not only be able to create a great mix in the room, or at least a decent mix with a volunteer whose skill set is generally from here to here, and that's totally okay. But then you're now creating a broadcast mix where they're doing both of those at the same time. With your average volunteer, that's just a little bit too much. So the idea is make the job a manageable one. So with that piece out of the way, what this church has done is they're building a very elaborate, I saw the photos and the drawings, unreal. Now they have a massive budget, but at the same time, thought leaders lead thought. And so the idea of actually being able, and they just did a conference where basically all the worship was done exactly like I'm talking about. Hey, so-and-so, can you go ahead and take us away? Awesome. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. That's already there. You're not providing an inauthentic worship experience. What they've been perfecting this entire time, and they've been knocking it out of the park doing, is creating an amazing worship experience without people in the room. And the great thing about that is that all of a sudden you begin to kind of go, we don't need the congregation in the room to worship authentically. And we're not making a worship video. We're creating congregation-centric worship, and we're taking the biggest advantage of the technology that we possibly can to do that, which means you're creating an amazing worship experience for everybody. That's really powerful.
Let me throw the ball to Dave here, because Dave, I want you to get on your soapbox, but I'm gonna time you here, okay? Some of the counter arguments that I hear from pastors, clients that I work with, people that we coach is, we are doing live worship. This whole pre-producing and broadcasting it, like we see other campuses do it, right? We see one pastor be the preacher for multiple campuses, so each campus might have its own worship set, but then the pastor sermon gets simulcasted to the other campuses. Something about the worship experience, there's a barrier, a mental block there where pastors are like, no, we're doing live worship. We really want to stream it. And we'll talk about how to make your live worship, if you are going to not pre-produce it and broadcast it live. We're gonna hit that next, which was what Doug was talking about. But Dave, can you talk to us a little bit about that mindset of, okay, is this, I know you want to, but go, Dave.
So I think I think it comes back to the reality that we have different audiences now. A lot of churches have been live streaming for years, and they have been, you and I, Justin, we talk about how there's something that happens each week at your church pre-COVID, let's say, which is you're producing a live event. You've got a mini concert, you've got your keynote speaker, you've got breakout sessions, we call that Sunday school. And then, after your keynote, you may have another mini concert. And we've been doing that for, well over a century. Now we've introduced the concept of live streaming and bringing people part of that experience. If you and I go to a conference, or if we decide we can't go to a conference, we're going to watch the live stream of the conference. We're watching this live event happen, and it's been the same thing for people that are watching the live stream at your church. I can't be there, so I'm going to watch it happen, as opposed to I can't be there, I want to experience it. And we have now moved into a place. We talked about, as COVID was happening, we got to a point where it was an either or. We had been either or, and now we're yes and both. And that's the key, I think, is for a long time I've heard lots of pastors, and we even have some that are insiders. We're not putting on a show. We're not trying to do a show. We're not trying to do this big concert and all this sort of show. Well, the reality is that half your audience is expecting you to do that to a degree, and it's because of the fact that we are all consumers and we're all watching TV. We're used to seeing TV. We're used to seeing things with high production values. And now it's time for the church to realize that half their audience, if nothing else, is going to be seasonally, half their congregation is going to be a remote audience. It's going to be an audience that's looking on their phone or watching on their tablet or watching on their Roku, seeing what's going on. And so we have to start addressing that, which is little things like the pastor talking to the camera as well as talking to the audience that's sitting in front of him and going back to the camera, and then those 5 people that they pick out. And that dovetails into the music as well. You either have to get really, really good at like Doug was talking about, a broadcast production mix, and you can. It's, depending on how elaborate your worship environment or the worship pieces. Let's say, if you got 4 people, have you got 24 people? The more you've added to that, the more intricate that mix is going to become. But you can give that broadcast quality and not lose that live effect. But you don't necessarily have to do that. In fact, you can, and we've been kind of doing this at our church, guys, because we have an overflow room that we have been made available for the people that are at high risk, maybe the older folks or immunocompromised folks, for them to be in there together, not have to get with the children and everybody, the youth, and get hugged a million times and all this kind of stuff that the main congregation has. So what we've been doing, instead of trying to do our worship from the worship center into the worship in the fellowship hall, we have a live band in there. It's a smaller setup, but they're doing live worship, and someone keeps them timed basically with when the pastor comes on and stuff like that. So there's a whole lot that you can do, and you can do hybrids. I think you can do some live stuff. You can have some pre-recorded stuff. If the pre-recorded stuff, Doug, could they not have that playing and then the people on stage, for the people in the room, be kind of clicked in with that and kind of get that synced up so that you can watch it happen live, but it's also being on the screen for the broadcast?
That's a great question. And for those of us that have a lot of real world church experience, I'm not intending to beat up on the church media guys, so to speak. How many times have you seen the video come up and the sound's not on? I would say 25% of the time, when there is an in-service video, the sound is muted when that video starts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not flipping rocket science.
I'm the guy that whacks people on the head for that.
It's there. The video didn't mysteriously appear on the screen as like, oh, we have audio for the video. That's why they call it a run-through.
Yeah.
But the reality is, when your production skill level is here, you miss those cues. So now we're juggling chainsaws and hatchets.
Right.
Now, it's a great idea. It's a really great idea. And if your production team is on it, there's the ability to segue that. And a lot of these larger churches will actually do kind of what you're talking about in the overflow room. The multi-site churches, pastor comes in. Now, here's one of the other things that I think we want to keep in mind is context. So I'm gonna rabbit trail horizontally in a couple verticals here. One is that, first of all, I want to talk about streaming in 4K for just a moment, because I specifically asked Ken and Glenn. I said, "What do you think about streaming in 4K?" And they were kind of like, "In most instances, unless you're recording, you don't want to do it." Now, you talked about Roku.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the deal: if I'm watching 1080p on a 4K TV,
mm-hmm.
literally 4 times the resolution, that is a production mistake. If you have the option, which you do with Ecamm Live, stream at 4K, so long as you've got the bandwidth and/or are using something like Restream.io.
Right, sure.
Which, in case you don't know what that is, that's a multi-streaming platform that basically allows you to take a single stream and they handle the heavy lifting of pushing it out to multiple platforms.
Right, and you can go to getrestream.com if you have questions about that.
That's right. Thank you very much. So, very clever, by the way. So then the idea is that you've got churches where a lot of people are used to having the pastor flown in, quote unquote, on video. So we're already kind of used to this not in-person experience. We're just flipping that script a little bit. So now there's one other vertical here, which is my church. We meet in a gymnasium, and guess what? We haven't been allowed into that gymnasium for months. So our entire worship experience is online, and it has been. And so now we are shifting as we move back into whatever this next season is going to be here in California. A bunch of people, I think, have gotten used to the idea of like, you know what? Let's see if I can save an hour of drive time to and from the church campus I don't have to be around a bunch of other people who, I get tired of my kids. My kids get sick at school or, whatever. I don't want to go to church and get sick. I know that sounds like a really bad thing to say, but I'm just going to say it. People have a heightened awareness about germ infection now, and that's not going to go away anytime soon. So generally speaking, I love being at home. Like and I realize I'm an exception because I live in this video studio. It's an audio video production facility. I spend most of my waking hours here, so I'm very comfortable being at home. Not everybody is in that way, and I totally understand that. So then, as a brief aside, before we get back into audio, it's utilizing vehicles like Ecamm Live and bringing in, so let's just say and this is an appropriate part of this. Let's talk about home groups with live worship that's streamed to the home group. So let's imagine that, I've got 5 home groups. Everybody in the home group tunes in, and basically you have the ability to have some worship that's being piped in via Skype. Everybody kind of dials into my Skype call. I worship. By the way, important find from yesterday. Skype is mono.
Yes.
Keep that in mind.
It's video conferencing software.
But Zoom, on the other hand, is not. So if we get time, we'll talk about a couple of little Zoom hacks that you're going to want to know about. But the idea, again, worship. Honestly, the life of churches is in their life groups. So the idea of having a little bit of streamed worship where everybody is connected, they can worship together. That's a really important thing. It's not just a Sunday experience. And I think a lot of people think about church, they think about the main event. The main event is not what brings people there. It's the midweek meetings that keep people there.
Right. And let me also add on to that, Doug. Let me also add on to that. My church, Crosswaves, started basically a decentralized network of home groups under the banner of a church in Michigan. But we've got groups all over the
blockchain.
It's the blockchain of churches. That's going to be in our next ad. But we've been doing pre-recorded worship for years now. And in fact, Christopher in the YouTube chat on the Church Media Guys channel said, imagine if denominations, the bigger churches, helped the smaller churches with music by pre-producing worship sets for those smaller churches. That's exactly what we do. Our music, we don't have a worship team because we're a decentralized church. We partner with another church physically located nearby HQ, and they provide our worship sets and the licensing and all that for us to broadcast it to our home groups. We need to get out of this. We need to get out of this mindset that church is so centralized. And I understand that the local body is, right? The local body is centralized. You go out and do missions, but you always come back for the corporate worship, for the gathering, fellowship, discipleship, whatever you want to call it. We always come back to that home base. And for our church, we have a HQ in Michigan, but we have home bases all around. We are doing community service around our small groups, home groups. We call them hotspots around the nation. And so this is only going to become more prevalent as COVID begins to get its long-term effect tendrils into culture. Already, I know my family, we love teachers. We have a lot of family, have a lot of friends that are teachers. Teachers are going to look different next year because of how difficult this year is. Talking to other pastors on Twitter, where I love to hang out, even church is going to look a lot different because pastors are getting burned out right now, trying to figure all this out. And Doug trying to run around with our heads cut off. How do we get our worship to sound better when we're live streaming as well as doing it in person and not even considering something like, well, let's go ahead and decentralize our worship music. We're not decentralizing worship itself, just the music portion of it, and broadcasting it in a way that's better and creates a better experience and a less distracting experience for our live streamers. I think this is something that we need to just wrap our heads around. It needs to be a mindset that we need moving forward. Otherwise, you're just not going to grasp what we're talking about today. Does that make sense, Doug and Dave?
Yeah, totally.
So Doug, continue. I want to talk a little bit about just for our brothers and sisters out there, our media guys and our media women, as we're talking about in our YouTube comments. If we are in a situation where, okay, maybe we'll pre-produce, but Pastor, my hands are tied, whatever. We did all the pushback we could. If we have to produce music for our live stream in addition to our in-person stuff, you were talking about there is a way to do a broadcast mix spoiler alert, there's a little bit of investment involved. If you want to do something well, you're going to have to invest in it. And I understand that, it's real tough because we got to get our volunteers just up to here to get that in-person mix sounding really good. Now we got to go up to here, which is why pre-production, you can stay at this level and get great results versus up here, you're going to start losing some results. Tell us a little bit about what it takes to produce live stream broadcast worship music or just music in general when you're also doing it live in person.
Great question. So the interesting thing is tomorrow, through my role with Worship Musician, there's a guy named Tom Brooks who plays keyboards with Alan Parsons, but also has produced over 100 worship records for Integrity Music, Grammy-winning, Dove Award-winning, like serious guy, and can play the daylights out of the keys. So he's being the talent, and Yamaha has a product specialist. So basically, I'm marrying their input coming in from Zoom, and that's going to be brought into Ecamm Live, and that's how we're going to multi-stream it. We're going to use it as a platform and then go to Restream. GetRestream.com, is that it?
Yes.
Okay, so the point being is that Zoom gives you the ability to access your audio interface. So each one of those folks is going to be using an audio interface, which enables you to be running a DAW, digital audio workstation like Pro Tools. Again, getting back to the Bethel example, you then are basically creating an album quality mix that's then being streamed out. And that is a great option. And, then literally I'm going to be blending audio sources from 2 different locations. Hopefully it's all going to go really well. And I'm going to take an important, one of the great things about this platform, Ecamm Live, that makes it honestly different than all other platforms is that Ken and Glenn are geniuses for one. For 2, they're total geniuses. And for 3, they actually, like you watch their Q&As, they're more excited about the new features than the end users are. That is a very, very, very rare thing. They don't get paid more for new features. Like your price doesn't go up. This is a very unique environment. And one of the things that they did when I had them on Doppler's Gear Garage is they were like, hey, why don't you record the audio and just test how it is? And I was like, they're video guys. Okay, they're streaming guys, they're computer guys. They totally aced me. I was like, I hadn't thought of that. So yesterday, as I was working in one of the pre-production meetings for this Yamaha thing, I recorded it. So I played it back and I could listen to it. And that enabled me to do pre-production. You do it before you flip and go live. Hello. So the idea is you actually get your team down there on, let's see, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. 6 opportunities to get your team down there to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And that's in 1 week. The great thing about volunteers is they're there for the right reason. Sometimes it's harder to motivate people that are getting paid. Right. I got my job to do. I've got my roles and responsibilities. I can't. And not everybody's like that. I get it. But the point being is the great thing about volunteers is usually they're happy to serve. Yeah. And especially in a season like this. So the point being is if you have a facility to go to, then you start going, okay, well, let's instead of streaming, let's use the record function in Ecamm Live. Let's do a song. Let's watch back. Let's listen. Ecamm Live was built for this. I mean, literally, it makes it so easy to do that. And not only that, you can imagine you've got that mix crate. It's an original song. You record it into Ecamm Live, you share it with your congregation via Facebook and YouTube, and you say, hey, we're introducing a new song this weekend. Here it is. Can't wait to see you. I mean, now you're using all the production to work for you instead of against you. And, it's a great opportunity.
And you're building up interest and you're getting people, they can start learning the song. Yep. While they're at work or driving or whatever like that, doing that whole thing. I'll tell you, one of the things that you brought up earlier was, we were talking about sort of, jumping back and forth between doing the live set and a recording or playing those at the same time, joining a recording, doing that sort of stuff. What did all you lamented that, getting the production team in sync sometimes can be a problem. One of the things that I see a whole lot in churches, and it was happening at our church, and after talking with our worship pastor, we kind of made the adjustment that I'm going to talk about. We have to remember, see, I do this all day long. So, I mean, I do, when I'm done here, In about 15 minutes, I'm heading to a TV station the studio that I built, and I'm going to do episodes for a show that we do out in LA. So, I'm doing like 3 shows a day for a television network. So I am really good at doing live production. I'm really good at doing live production by myself. I'm really good at, hitting my my iPad to play the bumper music, and then starting a digital move on one camera while I get the other one queued up, while I'm adjusting the audio and I'm cueing the host. Kind of like flying a helicopter. You got your hands and feet going at the same time. I've gotten really good at that because I have done thousands of these. So I've got more than 10,000 hours of experience. Now, our volunteers at our church, they don't. We are there for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Some churches do 3 services. You're there for 4 hours, whatever. But you're not doing this every day. And because we have volunteers, we don't want everybody. We want people to sit with their husbands and wives. We want them to sit with their family. We want to do stuff like that. So Team A is going to be this Sunday. Team B is going to be next Sunday. Team C is going to be the following Sunday. Team A will be at the end of the month. And people are getting experience very little. They are not consistent in doing the tasks, which is why they miss little things like, oh, I'm supposed to unmute this because I haven't done this for 3.5 or 4 weeks. I've done this for a grand total of 3 hours in the last quarter. That's not experience. That is basically putting out a fire. I mean, that's it. That's spitting in the wind. You need to give your volunteers time to learn because they only have a couple of hours a week to do it. So they need to work for 2 months straight. That gives them 8 or 16 hours of hands on the equipment and getting their feet wet. When you do stuff like that and people start building up this rack of experience, all of a sudden your volunteers can become professionals, and then they can adapt on the fly because they have a lot of muscle memory. Wouldn't you say that's the case there, Doug?
Yes, the other thing is the other obvious people to bring into your production team are people from the worship team.
Absolutely.
Because they actually understand sound at some level.
Yes.
And so they can hear the difference between a bass drum and a bass guitar. Mm-hmm. You don't have to explain to them like, oh, you mean we don't just put up one mic on the drum set and we're good? There are some fundamental things that people who don't understand producing live sound or producing sound in the studio just don't understand. It's like bringing somebody who they work with paint, setting them up with a multicam video studio with audio production and a shotgun mic and a background and lights and saying, all right, produce a show. Here we go. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, we're live. They just don't have the skill set. And the unfortunate thing is that most churches are generally not super skilled at raising up from the ranks. And traditionally, unfortunately, I will say it because it's a constant thing, is most sound techs have decided what they do is so complicated they can't possibly train somebody else up. I'm the only one that can do this, and it's just stupid.
That's a whole other show,
Doug. If they catch COVID, the church is totally stuck, and then potentially has to hire a professional person to come in. It's a great opportunity to get somebody saved, mind you. But the point being is that we're about replication. We're supposed to be looking around us going, who in the midst of training them to do a job can I be discipling? And this is ultimately, the thing is like, I'm going to, one of the production notes that we made the other day is like a bad worship experience, I'm going to say it, equals bad tithing.
Yeah.
Sooner than later, if you make, there we go. If you
it's a shallow statement, but it's true.
So bad that people actually just kind of go, and there's this little church, I'm not going to mention the name, and their worship was, I share it with people in a non-public setting because I want you to see how bad it actually is. The camera's all the way at the back of the room. The vocals are so out of tune, it's embarrassing. As like somebody should have just said, this is probably a bad idea. And here's the thing, is that if you're used to watching now on your home TV, and maybe you watch YouTube, and you're picking this up on and I mean watch other stuff on YouTube, and then you go to a poorly lit, poorly shot, poorly recorded, out of tune worship experience. That's painful. And you know what? I got to tell you, the next Sunday you might be going like, you know what? Maybe we should watch Stephen Furtick. And guess what? They're gone. So here's the thing is that what people also need to understand that's really, really, really important is that people used to church shop this way. Now they do it with one of these.
Yeah.
If your worship experience sucks, don't put it online. Do yourself a favor. Nobody wants to hear bad, out of tune, out of time, poorly mixed worship. Nobody. Seriously, it's like going to a bad restaurant on date night. You
Well,
just
I
don't want
think,
to do it again.
I mean, to draw an easy physical parallel, it's just like, the reason why we use a PA system and a microphone for the pastor, I mean, because we don't want people in the back saying, come again? Like what pastor?
Yeah.
Speak up. And then you got the pastor yelling, and it just creates a bad in-person experience. So what we do is we give the pastor a microphone. We say, Pastor, here's the mic. We put up speakers, even just cheap PA speakers, just to amplify it, so he doesn't have to scream and shout and get the rag and pat his forehead. Like, we're past those days. And something as simple as just keeping in mind the people in the back pews or the back seats of the auditorium. We're gonna do something that maybe the people in the front don't need, but we're gonna think about the people in the back. Well, we have our live stream. We need to be thinking of them just as much as the people that are in the back of the auditorium. So Doug, we got a few minutes here left. I want to do a little bit of a twist here because we promised some people that we'd answer some questions. You had mentioned, and we'll have you back because there's a lot more to talk about. I want you back. You had mentioned that you can actually get better sound through Zoom. So there's a lot of people that it's Wednesday. They have home groups tonight. They have home groups tomorrow. They have service coming up on Sunday. They're obviously not going to pre-record within this week. There's some administration stuff we would encourage you to get taken care of first, as fast as possible. So if we are streaming music on Zoom, first I want to talk about, can you get a better quality sound out of Zoom? Because like me and Dave say, it's a meeting software. It's not really a live streaming software like Ecamm. So you have a ceiling for your audio, but you opened my eyes that we can actually raise that ceiling. And then also, we keep getting this question for churches that are not meeting in person and want to do a live worship experience in Zoom. You start playing two musicians together, they're out of sync because of the delays between me getting the video and hearing him and him hearing the video and seeing. Is there a way to get remote musicians playing in sync at the same time live?
Let's start with Zoom. How's that sound?
Yeah, please. Yeah, a
Okay,
lot of people
so
using that.
let me get over to Ecamm Live. Let me get over, and I'm going to have to switch applications here to do this. So let me get to the right application. That should be Jesus Culture. And now I'm actually I wasn't anticipating doing this, so let me get over to Zoom right here, and we're going to go to my Zoom meeting. All right. So, no, right. We're piping it to my Zoom meeting.
We're going to the future.
No. We don't want to do that. Okay, we're back. Okay. Let me deselect my camera source. That should allow me to solve that problem. There we go. Alternate camera source. There we go. All right, let's try that again. So there we go, and we're going to go here, and we're going to go to Zoom US. Good. So we're in my Zoom US meeting. All right, now, good. All right, we can do this. This is the other thing. You got to be nimble. So this guy right here, you can see in the upper left-hand corner, it says turn on original sound. Can you still hear me? Yeah?
Yeah, we can still hear. I just want to make sure, for the people watching, we are screen sharing, so you're seeing Doug from the top down. But if you look at the top, you can see the toolbar. That's what he's talking about. So look at the top left of your video here.
Thank you very much. So I have pulled up a Zoom meeting, and this little window right here says turn on original sound. Basically, you want it in this mode where it says turn off original sound, which really means the original sound is actually on.
Gotcha.
Now the deal is that you frequently won't see this. And again, as you notice, when I launched this meeting, this was set to turn on original sound where it says that, which really means that the original sound is actually in this mode. When it says turn off original sound, means the original sound is on. It basically means it doesn't compress the audio. Now, this guy right here is only available through a menu right here. And I think I'm going to have to once I've got the menu launched here, I'm going to have to do a little shift here in Ecamm Live. So give me just a moment. So let me tell you what I'm doing, and then we'll walk through that menu. So basically, you can see the outline of my mouse in the lower left-hand corner.
Yes.
Next to the microphone, there's a little up arrow. When you select that, that launches a menu. All right. And then at the very bottom of that menu, uh, and I'm going to jump back into Ecamm Live here and select that menu, which I think I can get to right here. There we go, settings. All right. So now you're seeing that settings menu. All right.
Yes.
Now this is where the special stuff happens. So again, this menu I got to from that little up arrow next to the microphone. This little advanced, you're in the audio settings, the advanced tab. And by the way, if you're in one of the other settings, you just kind of toggle down until you get to audio. You select advanced, and then this is where you turn that little indicator for turn on or turn off original sound. You want to disable suppress persistent background noise. You want to disable suppress intermittent background noise. And those generally should already be disabled. But this guy right here, this little checkbox is the magic checkbox. Now, once I quit that, yep, I knew that was going to happen. Hang on a second. Now we're back in the meeting here. There we go. And this is where this checkbox will appear if you didn't see it before. And you want it where it says, where it's saying turn off original sound, because really what that really means is it's saying that original sound is actually on. And that means that basically, if you think about your average guitar in worship, one of our favorite tools is using delay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about delay in streaming terms, that's also known as echo. That's bad. So what ends up happening is that Zoom and even Ecamm Live will see that as, oh, that's noise. We want to filter that out, which is why you're playing along, everything's great, and all of a sudden it goes, shoop, and ducks down. So that eliminates that problem. I basically use my audio interface via an application called Loopback, which we're not going to cover today, but that enables me to kind of manage all the audio sources and pipe them into Ecamm Live, and it just makes everything nice and happy. And so that approach enables you to get, honestly, pretty much studio quality audio streaming into Zoom. You can then bring the Zoom, as we're doing right now, you can bring the Zoom meeting into Ecamm Live. Gentlemen?
Yep. Or we've got videos
awesome
on our YouTube Church Media Guys channel. If you just want to go straight from Zoom to Facebook or to YouTube or to soon Restream, we're going to make a video on that. And this is for music. So if you're just speaking, the turn off, the original sound off is good, because it's going to compress. It's going to be a little bit more clear as far as like using bandwidth. You're not going to get echo, or if some dog starts barking, it might try to silence that. But when you're doing music stuff, you don't need all that. You want the reverb. You don't want the noise gate cutting that last chord out, like Jesus, and then you lose it, right? And then you're kind of like, what happened? Doug, last question that we have time for. Is it possible, if we meet on Zoom, to have a guitarist, vocalist, maybe a box, what do you call the box drum? Not a djembe, but the box drum, whatever it's called. Cajon, yes, cajon. So the purpose of the filters, someone on Facebook is asking, the purpose of the filters is to make your music sound better, right? If you just try to stream music, even just you and the guitar, it's going to be very compressed. It's going to be very just crunchy, very filtered sounding. You turn on original audio, you get the natural sound. But if we have musicians with natural sound, there's delays, there's sync issues. Is there a way that we can do live music remotely on Zoom? Is that possible?
If you take a look at in the background, if one of you is monitoring your Facebook feed and then you're simultaneously monitoring your YouTube feed, and then you're looking at your Facebook feed on your mobile device, you're going to notice that your Facebook mobile stream is ahead of the desktop mobile stream. Latency and offset, locally, literally, you're watching the same thing in the same physical location. 3 sources completely out of sync. Yeah. Imagine multiplying that by 4 musicians. There is a Wham Shazam, or I forget the name of the application in this moment. There are some examples where it works really well. I've seen it work really well. However, that's imagining that, and I did a bunch of reading on it, because Katie, who the amazing Katie, said, hey, this is one of the things we're trying to figure out. So I went off and did a bunch of research on it. I found a really good Australian website where they kind of went through the pros and the cons, and basically they came up with my presupposition, but I needed to do a little bit of research. I have not tried it yet remotely, but they were like, the problem is everybody has a different amount of their band, their up and their down is going to be different. Their computer is going to be different. People like to have 20 applications at the same time. So even if you have the same up and down, but we've got 20 tabs open on our Google Chrome, and somebody else has a brand new computer with all their hard drive space, all the RAM in the world, those two computers are going to behave differently.
And
so basically,
depending on where you are in the country, and who your internet service provider is, between the three of us are on Skype right now. Now, my signal could be getting to you guys through 25 different computers, or servers on a network, hopping from node to node to node, jumping before it ever gets to one of you guys. One of you guys could be coming to me via 3, only making 3 hops. The other one could be coming through 10 hops. But the signals are jumping around networks around the country before they ever get to their destination point. Multiply that by 25 people. That's a big latency thing. That's when you do a speed test and you get that ping, and it says, your ping is 14, your ping is 12, your ping is 27. That's the kind of latency that we're talking about.
So bad but true. So the answer is
yes.
And honestly, I don't see that changing. I mean, before we got on the call, you guys were talking about some of the challenges you've had with your local service providers. And there was a period of time until we got Comcast out here for like the 3rd time. They replaced, some hardware, and now my internet doesn't shut down at noon. Like literally, like every day, right around noon, my internet would go down. Thankfully, I wasn't streaming at that time, but I'm just like, literally at clockwork, something happens that in their system that with the router that was here, they replaced the router and somehow that fixed it. But like No, that happens in California in summertime.
Oh, that's
so don't get me started.
Like Dave said, a third world country. Oh man, there goes half our audience.
Oh,
sorry.
Hey guys,
we're Texans. We're super proud. Sorry.
I hope people watching, you got this. And I would like to just say, look, Worship Musician Magazine, we're dedicated to helping worship teams and worship musicians and tech teams get better by staying. worshipmusician.com. It's always free. We come out monthly. It's all digital. We're here to help. Gentlemen?
Absolutely. Thank you, Doug, for being here. Now, everyone watching this, don't just learn. Learning is good. Executing is what makes differences. So go take what you've learned. Go change.